Montana Territory, 1876. The winter had been harsh, unforgiving as the land itself, and now spring brought little mercy as rain hammered against the weathered planks of Silver Creek's only saloon. Wyatt Xanders stood at the bar, one boot resting on the brass rail, watching rainwater pool beneath the swinging doors. At 25, his shoulders already carried the weight of a man twice his age, not in stoop but in the steady, watchful way he held himself, like a man who'd seen too much of the world's cruelty to be caught unaware again. The barkeep gestured toward Wyatt's empty glass. No, Wyatt placed a coin on the counter, heading out. The barkeep snorted, in this weather you got a death wish, son. Perhaps he did. 3 years working cattle had taught Wyatt that lone wolves survived where packs fell to disease and starvation. Attachments meant vulnerability, and vulnerability got men killed on the frontier. His father had taught him that lesson with his dying breath, bleeding out from an Apache arrow while clutching Wyatt's mother's locket. Love was a luxury afforded to townspeople and Easterners, not to men who made their living with rope, gun, and grit. Wyatt adjusted his hat, water dripping from its brim. Got cattle to move, boss won't pay for delays. The truth was simpler and more pathetic. He had nowhere else to be, no one waiting for his return. Just a bedroll in a bunkhouse shared with 5 other ranch hands who were strangers despite working side by side for months. Sometimes he wondered if that emptiness would follow him forever, but he pushed such thoughts away. Better to be alone than to watch someone you love die, better to be hardened than broken. He stepped into the downpour, boots sinking into mud as lightning split the sky. The rumble of thunder masked another sound, the creak of wagon wheels and desperate shouts. Wyatt turned toward the commotion, squinting through rain. A freight wagon careened down the muddy street, horses wild-eyed and panicked, driver nowhere to be seen. Inside the wagon, a young woman's scream cut through the storm. Without thinking, Wyatt sprinted through the mud. The lead horse veered toward the creek embankment, a deadly drop in spring flood. He lunged for the bridle, boots sliding, fingers closing around wet leather as momentum dragged him forward. Pain shot through his shoulder as he dug his heels in, muscles straining against the weight of the panicked team. "Whoa, steady now," his voice cut through the animals' fear, a note of authority giving them pause. The wagon lurched to a stop mere feet from the embankment's edge. Wyatt's heart hammered against his ribs as he steadied the trembling horses, speaking low and firm until their breathing slowed. Only then did he turn toward the wagon. "You all right in there, miss?" he called. Silence answered him. Concerned, Wyatt secured the team to a nearby hitching post and approached the wagon. The canvas covering was torn, revealing crates of supplies and a huddled figure pressed against the far corner. She couldn't have been older than 20, with hair the color of honey wheat and eyes wide with fear. Her blue calico dress was soaked through, torn at the sleeve and smudged with dirt. A nasty bruise darkened her left cheekbone. He tried to, she swallowed hard, glancing backward as if expecting pursuit. "I had to get away." "Who tried what?" Wyatt's hand instinctively moved to his revolver. "Mr. Holcomb. Said he bought me from the orphanage matron." Her chin lifted slightly, a spark of defiance amid her fear. "I'm not property to be purchased." Wyatt recognized the name, Silas Holcomb, wealthy rancher with a reputation for cruelty. "No, miss, you certainly aren't." He offered his hand. "I'm Wyatt Xanders, work at the Triple R, let's get you somewhere safe." Her fingers were cold as ice as she hesitantly placed them in his palm. "Meredith." "Meredith Davis." "How old are you, Miss Davis?" 19 last month, she said, her honey blonde hair plastered to her face by the rain. Old enough to know what Holcomb had planned wasn't proper employment. Something protective stirred in Wyatt's chest as he helped her from the wagon, an unfamiliar feeling he quickly suppressed. Getting involved meant trouble, especially against a man like Holcomb, but abandoning her wasn't an option. "Sheriff's office is this way," he said, steering her toward the jailhouse. "No," she pulled back, "please, the matron at the orphanage. She and Sheriff Miller are cousins, he'll just send me back." Wyatt studied her face, searching for deception but finding only desperate sincerity. "You've got nowhere to go." "I'll find something, work in a kitchen, laundry." "Anything honest?" Her voice carried conviction despite her shivering. The sensible course was clear: direct her to the church or Women's Aid Society and be on his way. Instead, Wyatt found himself removing his coat and placing it around her shoulders. "Mrs. Abernathy runs the boarding house. She's fair-minded and always needs help with cooking and cleaning. I'll take you there." Relief washed across Meredith's features. "Thank you. I can't repay you now, but—" "No repayment needed," Wyatt cut her off, uncomfortable with gratitude. just doing what anyone would. But as they walked through the rain, Meredith leaning against him for support, Wyatt knew that wasn't true. Most would have looked away, avoided involvement. He'd nearly done the same. Something about her determination struck a chord, a young woman alone, fighting for dignity in a world designed to strip it away. Mrs. Abernathy opened her door with suspicion that quickly transformed to maternal concern at the sight of Meredith's condition. Within minutes, she had the young woman seated by the kitchen fire wrapped in dry blankets. Holcomb's involved. Lord have mercy, Mrs. Abernathy's mouth formed a tight line as she prepared hot tea. That man's evil has gone unchecked too long. I just need work, ma'am, Meredith said. I can cook, clean, mend. Child, you need rest first, Mrs. Abernathy turned to Wyatt, lowering her voice. He'll come looking. I know, Wyatt glanced toward the window. I'll speak with my boss. Triple R doesn't bend to Holcomb's wishes. Mrs. Abernathy nodded. She can stay here tonight. After that. The implication hung between them. A single woman without family or position had few options in frontier towns, especially one pursued by a powerful man. I'll return tomorrow, Wyatt promised, wondering why he felt so invested in a stranger's welfare. He tipped his hat to Meredith. Rest easy, Miss Davis. Her eyes, the warm brown of autumn leaves, met his. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there, Mr. Xanders. Wyatt, he corrected automatically, then regretted the familiarity. Keeping distance was safer. Good evening, ladies. Outside, the rain had subsided to a gentle patter, but Wyatt barely noticed. His thoughts remained with the young woman whose determination outweighed her fear. He'd seen men with less courage face gunfire. Something about her stirred admiration and an unsettling awareness that his carefully constructed isolation suddenly felt less like protection and more like prison. Morning brought clear skies and complications. Wyatt arrived at the ranch to find his employer, Thomas Ryder, deep in conversation with two of Holcomb's men. Stole his wagon and supplies, one was saying. Ungrateful little thief after he offered her honest work. Ryder noticed Wyatt and beckoned him over. Xanders, you were in town yesterday. See any sign of a young woman, blonde, driving a freight wagon? Wyatt's expression remained neutral. Can't say I did. Storm had most folks indoors. The men exchanged glances. Holcomb's offering $15 to anyone who brings her in. Must be valuable supplies, Wyatt remarked. Just the principle, the taller man said. Can't have people stealing what's rightfully purchased. The wording made Wyatt's jaw tighten. If I see anything, I'll be sure to notify the sheriff. After they departed, Ryder fixed Wyatt with a shrewd look. You're a poor liar, son. Sir, your right hand twitches when you're not speaking true. Has since I hired you, Ryder leaned against the corral fence. Now want to tell me what you know about Holcomb's missing girl. Wyatt considered his options before deciding on truth. She claims he bought her from an orphanage matron. Was running from him when I stopped the team from going over the embankment. Ryder spat tobacco juice. Sounds like Holcomb, man treats people like livestock. She's staying at Abernathy's boarding house, Wyatt continued. But won't be safe there long. No, she won't, Ryder studied the distant mountains. My sister runs a small hotel in Helena. Girl could work there, far from Holcomb's reach. Relief washed through Wyatt. That's generous, sir. Not generosity, justice, Ryder's eyes hardened. Holcomb's been poisoning this territory long enough. Question is who'll escort her to Helena. Before Wyatt could speak, Ryder continued, we've got a cattle delivery heading that direction. 3 weeks' drive, you handle the remuda well enough to manage both duties. It wasn't a question. Wyatt nodded, ignoring the voice warning against entanglements. Yes, sir. Good, leave tomorrow. Earlier she's gone, less trouble for all. Wyatt rode to town immediately, finding Meredith helping Mrs. Abernathy with laundry. Her hair was pinned neatly back, the golden strands catching sunlight through the window. Without fear clouding her features, he noticed the gentle curve of her cheekbone, the determined set of her chin. Mr. Xanders, she greeted him, smoothing her borrowed dress. Wyatt, he corrected again, then explained Ryder's offer. Hope blossomed across her face. Helena, that's wonderful, but the journey. I'll be escorting you. We leave tomorrow with a cattle drive. Her smile faltered. I've never been on a cattle drive. It's not comfortable travel for anyone, Miss Davis. Meredith, she insisted. And I'm not afraid of discomfort, just She glanced at Mrs. Abernathy, who nodded encouragement. I've never been outside this county. The world seems very large suddenly. Something in her vulnerability touched him. The world is large, he agreed, but Helena's a decent place. You'll find your footing there. Mrs. Abernathy clucked her tongue. She'll need proper traveling clothes. That dress won't survive the trail. Mr. Ryder provided funds. Wyatt produced an envelope for necessities. As they made arrangements, Wyatt caught himself watching Meredith's animated expressions. Her resilience was remarkable, yesterday terrified and fleeing, today planning a new life with practical determination. He wondered briefly about her past, then reminded himself it didn't matter. His responsibility was delivering her safely to Helena, nothing more. Yet as he rode back to the ranch, Wyatt found himself uncharacteristically anticipating tomorrow's departure. He told himself it was simply the prospect of open trail after a long winter, not the company of a golden-haired young woman whose courage had inadvertently breached the walls he'd built around himself. Dawn broke over the valley as 8 riders, 1,200 cattle, and 1 young woman prepared to depart. Meredith sat atop a gentle mare, wearing split riding skirts and a sturdy jacket. Her hair was braided tightly beneath a wide-brimmed hat, making her appear almost boyish from a distance, a deliberate precaution Wyatt had suggested. Keep to the middle of the herd, he instructed. Dust is bad there, but you're less visible to anyone watching from town. She nodded, adjusting leather gloves that were slightly too large. I won't cause trouble. Wasn't suggesting you would, Wyatt softened his tone, just cautious. Ryder approached on horseback. Miss Davis, safe journey to you. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Ryder. Thanking me too soon. 3 weeks of trail dust, saddle sores, and cowboy cooking ahead, he smiled briefly. Xanders will look after you, best rider of the remuda I've got. Wyatt felt inexplicably pleased at the compliment as they moved out, cattle lowing in the cool morning air. By midday they had settled into the rhythm of the drive, a slow, steady pace that would cover 15 miles on good days. Meredith proved a quick study, keeping her mount under control and following instructions without complaint. When they made camp that evening, she dismounted stiffly but immediately asked how she could help. Rest, Wyatt told her, taking her horse's reins. First day's always hardest. I'm not made of china, Mr. Xanders, her brown eyes held a stubborn gleam. I won't be the only idle hands in camp. He conceded with a nod. See Cookie then, he can always use help. The crusty camp cook grumbled but put her to work peeling potatoes. By firelight, Wyatt observed her easy conversation with the men, who initially regarded her with awkward caution but soon relaxed. She asked intelligent questions about cattle, the trail ahead, and their experiences. Girls got spirit, the trail boss Jensen remarked to Wyatt later. Most women would be complaining by now. She's had a harder life than most, Wyatt replied, surprising himself with the defensive edge in his voice. That night Meredith slept in a small tent apart from the men's bedrolls. Wyatt placed his own nearby for protection, he told himself, though he found himself listening for her breathing long after the camp had quieted. Days fell into routine. Meredith's fair skin burned then tanned, her hands blistered then calloused. She never complained, though Wyatt noticed her wincing when dismounting each evening. On the 4th night he silently offered a tin of salve. For saddle sores, he explained, turning away to give her privacy. Thank you, the simple gratitude in her voice made something twist in his chest. The following morning they encountered the first major obstacle, a river swollen with spring melt. The cattle balked at the crossing, forcing the drovers to work twice as hard to keep the herd together. Stay back, Wyatt instructed Meredith as he rode toward the lead steers. Rivers running high. For hours they struggled, men and horses soaked and exhausted. Just as they'd nearly finished, a young steer panicked mid-crossing, thrashing against the current. Without warning, Meredith guided her horse into the water. Miss Davis, Wyatt shouted, watching in horror as she maneuvered alongside the struggling animal. To his astonishment, she began singing, a soft, gentle melody that somehow carried over the water's rush. The steer's thrashing subsided as she herded it toward shore, her mare stepping surely through the current. Once safely across, Wyatt approached her, equal parts angry and impressed. That was foolish. It worked, she replied, water dripping from her braid. My father raised cattle before he died, singing calms them. Your father, it was the first personal detail she'd shared. Meredith's expression closed slightly. He died when I was 12, mother followed a year later. That's when I went to the orphanage. The simple tragedy of it silenced Wyatt's reprimand. You handled that well, he conceded. But next time, warn me before diving into danger. Her smile was unexpected and brilliant, so there will be a next time you'll allow me to help. Something warm unfurled in Wyatt's chest, a sensation so foreign he nearly misidentified it as indigestion. Let's get you dry clothes before you catch pneumonia. That evening the men treated Meredith differently, with respect earned rather than politeness offered. She joined their fireside conversation with new confidence, and when Cookie handed her a tin cup, he gruffly announced, "Girl deserves coffee, not that tea mush." Later, as most bedded down, Wyatt found her still by the fire, gazing at stars. Should rest, he advised, settling beside her. Long day tomorrow. It's peaceful, she murmured. At the orphanage, we never had quiet, too many children, too little space. Must have been difficult. It taught me things, patience. Working without thanks, she glanced at him, keeping parts of yourself hidden to survive. The observation struck uncomfortably close to Wyatt's own philosophy. What parts do you hide, Miss Davis? She considered this, dreams mostly. Wanting more than just survival, a real home someday, family, embarrassment colored her voice. Foolish things. Not foolish, Wyatt said softly, surprising himself, just challenging out here. What about you? What do you hide, Wyatt Xanders? The directness of her question startled him. Most people respected his reticence, never prying beneath the surface. Not much worth finding, he deflected. I disagree, Meredith's gaze was too perceptive. You pretend indifference but watch over everyone. You claim to want solitude yet placed your bedroll nearest to my tent. Heat crept up Wyatt's neck. Protection only. Of course, her smile held no mockery, only gentle understanding that somehow unsettled him more than ridicule would have. We should sleep, long day tomorrow, as you said. As she retired to her tent, Wyatt remained, disturbed by how easily she'd seen through defenses others never questioned. More disturbing still was the realization that, for the first time in years, he'd found someone whose opinion mattered to him. The following days brought new challenges, a broken wagon wheel, straying cattle, and increasingly rough terrain. Through each obstacle, Wyatt found himself working alongside Meredith with growing admiration. She learned quickly, anticipated needs, and maintained good humor when more seasoned men grew short-tempered. At night, they often found themselves talking by the fire after others had retired, careful conversations that gradually revealed more of themselves. He learned she could read and write, taught by her mother who had been a schoolteacher before marriage. She discovered he had a younger brother somewhere in California, estranged since their parents' deaths. Why don't you write to him? She asked one evening. Wyatt poked at the fire, too much unsaid for too long. Some distances can't be bridged. Any distance can be bridged with enough courage, she replied. Life's too uncertain out here to waste it on pride. Her words haunted him that night, the simple wisdom cutting through years of justified isolation. Wyatt had convinced himself that emotional distance was strength, but watching Meredith's open connections with others challenged that belief. Despite everything she'd suffered, she remained willing to trust, to care, to see good in others. 10 days into their journey, disaster struck. A sudden thunderstorm spooked the herd, triggering a stampede just as they made camp. Men scrambled for horses as cattle crashed through tents and supplies. Meredith, Wyatt shouted, scanning the chaos for her golden braid. A scream answered him, not hers but Cookie's. The old man was down, clutching his leg as cattle thundered past. Without hesitation, Meredith darted toward him, dodging between panicked steers to reach his side. Wyatt's heart nearly stopped. He spurred his horse forward, reaching them as Meredith dragged Cookie toward a rocky outcropping. Leaning from the saddle, Wyatt seized the cook's collar, hauling him across his mount as Meredith scrambled up behind. They made it to safety seconds before the main body of the herd poured through their campsite, destroying nearly everything in their path. Hours later, the cattle contained and camp partially restored, Wyatt found Meredith tending Cookie's broken leg. You could have been killed, he said, voice rough with lingering fear. She glanced up, hands steady as she wrapped bandages. So could you, coming after us? That's different. Why? Because you're a man, challenge flashed in her eyes. Or because your life somehow matters less than mine? The question struck him silent. It was precisely what he believed, that his life was expendable, a philosophy that made risking it easier. But hearing it stated so plainly made the belief sound hollow. Don't do it again, he finally said, gentler than intended. I won't promise that, Meredith tied off the bandage. I can't stand by watching someone suffer if I can help. Cookie grunted from his makeshift bed. You two argue like an old married couple, either kiss or leave a man to sleep. Heat flushed Wyatt's face as Meredith laughed, the sound bright against the night's earlier terror. He retreated, confused by emotions he couldn't name, relief at her safety, admiration for her courage, and something deeper that frightened him more than the stampede had. The next morning brought new complications. Cookie couldn't ride and they were still 8 days from Helena. I'll take him back to the last settlement, Jensen decided. 2 men with me, the rest continue with the herd. I should go with Cookie, Meredith offered. He needs care. No, Wyatt said too quickly. You need to reach Helena, I promised Mr. Ryder. Something shifted in Meredith's expression, surprise followed by a softness that made Wyatt look away. All right, she agreed. I'll continue on. With 3 men and Cookie departing, the remaining drovers faced double work. Meredith took over cooking without being asked, rising before dawn to have coffee and biscuits ready. Her stew might not match Cookie's, but no one complained, especially when she supplemented meals with wild berries gathered during breaks. The smaller crew meant longer hours and fewer chances to talk, but Wyatt found himself constantly aware of Meredith's location. He told himself it was responsibility, not the increasing pull he felt toward her laugh, her quiet strength, the way sunlight caught her hair. On the 14th day, they crossed into more populated territory, encountering other travelers on the trail. At a trading post where they stopped for supplies, Wyatt noticed men watching Meredith with open interest. Protective instinct surged through him. Stay close, he murmured, positioning himself between her and prying eyes. She raised an eyebrow. Are you worried about my virtue, Mr. Xanders, or something else? Before he could respond, a voice called out, Well now, ain't this convenient? Wyatt turned to find 2 men approaching, Holcomb's riders from the ranch. His hand moved instinctively to his revolver. Heard talk of a cattle drive with a yellow-haired gal, the taller one said. Holcomb's raised the reward to $50. You're mistaken, Wyatt replied coldly. Move along. The second man circled, eyeing Meredith. Ain't mistaken. That's her all right, even in them man's clothes. Meredith stood straight, chin lifted. I'm not Mr. Holcomb's property. Got papers saying different, miss, signed by the orphanage matron herself. The man reached toward her. Come quiet now. Wyatt's gun cleared leather before the man's fingers could touch her. Back away. The standoff drew attention. Other patrons moved aside as the trading post owner emerged with a shotgun. Take your business outside, gentlemen. This woman's a thief, the first rider announced. Stole a wagon and supplies from Silas Holcomb. We're retrieving her legal-like. She goes nowhere with you, Wyatt stated. Jensen stepped forward. Miss Davis is under our protection, traveling to legal employment in Helena. Any issue should be taken to territorial authorities, not handled by hired guns. The men hesitated, outmatched by the drovers who had gathered behind Wyatt. Holcomb won't forget this interference, the taller one warned before they retreated. Outside, Jensen organized immediate departure. They'll be back with more men, need to make distance before nightfall. As they rode hard through afternoon heat, Meredith guided her mare alongside Wyatt's mount. Thank you, she said quietly, just doing. If you say what anyone would do, I'll push you from that horse, she interrupted. It wasn't just anyone, it was you. Her directness left him without ready response. Finally, he said, I gave my word to see you safely to Helena. Is that the only reason? Her question hung between them, demanding truth he wasn't ready to acknowledge. Wyatt looked ahead at the trail. We should catch up to the others. Something like disappointment crossed her face before she nodded, falling back. The distance between them felt suddenly vast despite their proximity, and Wyatt recognized it as his own creation, a barrier built from fear rather than wisdom. That night they made cold camp without fire to avoid detection. The tension of possible pursuit kept conversation minimal as men took watch in shifts. Wyatt volunteered for the midnight hours, sitting vigilant as others slept. Soft footsteps approached Meredith, wrapped in her blanket against the chill. Couldn't sleep, she explained, settling beside him. Should try, tomorrow will be hard riding. I keep thinking about what happens after Helena, she hugged her knees. Starting over again among strangers. You'll manage, you're stronger than most men I've known. She smiled faintly, a compliment, Mr. Xanders, you're slipping. Despite himself, Wyatt's mouth curved. Don't tell the others I have a reputation. Yes, the lone wolf, her voice gentled, but even wolves have packs, Wyatt. Not all, he stared into darkness. Some are better solitary. Better? Or just safer, Meredith's perception cut too close again. What happened that made you believe connection is weakness rather than strength? No one had asked so directly before. The question pierced defenses worn thin by weeks in her company. Watched my father die trying to save my mother. She'd already been killed by the first arrow. His last words were warning me never to love something I couldn't stand to lose. The confession hung in night air. Meredith remained silent, then surprised him by taking his hand, her fingers warm against his. I'm sorry for your losses, she said simply, but your father spoke from grief, not wisdom. Living without connection isn't living at all, it's just surviving. Surviving is underrated, yet even as he said it, Wyatt recognized the hollow ring of a belief no longer fully embraced. Is it? Her fingers tightened briefly before withdrawing. I should let you keep watch. Good night, Wyatt. As she walked away, Wyatt felt colder than the night warranted. Her words echoed in his mind throughout his vigil, the simple truth challenging years of carefully constructed isolation. For the first time, he allowed himself to acknowledge what had been growing since that rainy day in Silver Creek. Meredith Davis had awakened something he'd thought long dead, the capacity to care deeply for another person. The realization terrified him. Their final days on trail passed in wary travel and watchful nights. Though Holcomb's men didn't reappear, the threat of pursuit kept the group alert and pushed their pace. Wyatt maintained careful distance from Meredith, unsettled by his own emotional awakening. She noticed, of course. Her perceptive eyes followed him with questions he avoided answering. Instead, he focused on practical matters, teaching her to shoot a small revolver, ensuring she knew the route to Ryder's sister's hotel, preparing her for arrival in Helena. On the 19th day, the city appeared on the horizon, a sprawling collection of buildings that represented safety for Meredith and the completion of Wyatt's obligation. He should have felt relief. Instead, approaching civilization brought a hollow ache he refused to name. We'll deliver the cattle to the stockyards first, Jensen announced. Xanders, you take Miss Davis to Mrs. Porter's hotel. As they rode through busy streets, Meredith's eyes widened at the sights, brick buildings, shop windows, ladies in fashionable dresses. Helena was far from eastern cities in sophistication, but compared to the small settlements she knew, it represented a different world. It's so large, she murmured. You'll adjust quickly, Wyatt replied, guiding their horses down a side street toward a three-story building with neat white trim. A sign proclaimed it Porter House Hotel. A plump, gray-haired woman greeted them at the door, her resemblance to Thomas Ryder unmistakable in the keen eyes and determined chin. You must be Miss Davis, she said warmly. My brother wrote you might need employment and lodging. Yes, ma'am, I'm grateful for the opportunity. And you're Xanders, Mrs. Porter extended her hand. Thank you for bringing her safely. Thomas speaks highly of you. Just following orders, ma'am. As Meredith's belongings were carried inside, Wyatt found himself lingering, searching for appropriate farewell words. His job was complete. He should return to the cattle, collect his pay, and continue the life he'd chosen. Well, he finally said awkwardly, good luck to you, Miss Davis. Her eyes held disappointment he couldn't bear to analyze. Thank you for everything, Mr. Xanders. The formality stung after weeks of growing closeness. Wyatt tipped his hat and turned away, each step more difficult than the last. At the street corner, some impulse made him look back. Meredith stood watching him, morning sunlight turning her hair to gold. Something in her stance, a mixture of strength and vulnerability, made his chest ache. Then Mrs. Porter guided her inside and the door closed between them. Wyatt returned to the stockyards, mechanically completing his duties as cattle were counted and payment distributed. Jensen approached as they finished, offering Wyatt's share. Good work, the trail boss said, heading back with us tomorrow. The question should have been simple. 3 weeks ago, Wyatt wouldn't have hesitated. Now something kept him from confirming. Not sure yet, he replied, tucking the money into his vest. Jensen's weathered face creased with understanding. That girl got under your skin. It wasn't a question. Wyatt didn't bother denying it. Happens to the best of us, Jensen continued. Question is, what are you gonna do about it? Nothing to do, she's safe here, has employment, lodging. And you've got cattle to drive, mountains to cross, winters to endure. Alone, Jensen spat tobacco juice. You're young to resign yourself to that life, Xanders. It's the life I chose. Is it? Jensen mounted his horse. We leave at dawn. With or without you. Alone with his thoughts, Wyatt wandered Helena's streets as evening approached. His feet carried him past the Porter house twice before he admitted to himself where he wanted to be. Still, he kept walking, arguing with himself about the foolishness of attachment, the wisdom of his solitary existence. Near dusk, a commotion drew his attention, raised voices from an alley beside a saloon. He recognized one immediately. I've told you I'm not going anywhere, Meredith's voice tight with fear but determined. Wyatt rounded the corner to find her backed against a wall, faced by three men including Holcomb's riders. Mr. Holcomb's mighty insistent, the tall one was saying. Paid good money for your indenture, law's on his side. Any law that treats people as property isn't worthy of respect, she shot back, though Wyatt could see her trembling. Miss Davis, he called, hand resting on his revolver, these men bothering you. Relief flooded her face. Wyatt. The men turned, hands moving toward weapons until they registered his ready stance. Still interfering, Cowboy, the taller one growled, this ain't your business. Miss Davis is under my protection, Wyatt stated, voice cold and certain. That makes it my business. You can't guard her forever, Holcomb's patient. He'll wait. Then he'll wait disappointed. Wyatt stepped forward. Tell your employer the lady remains in Helena under the protection of Thomas Ryder, whose connections in territorial government might interest the authorities regarding Holcomb's methods of acquiring female workers. The implied threat gave them pause. After a tense moment, they backed away. This ain't finished, one muttered as they retreated. Once they disappeared around the corner, Meredith sagged with relief. Thank you again. Are you hurt? Wyatt examined her with concern. No. They caught me returning from an errand for Mrs. Porter. Anger replaced fear in her expression. Will they truly keep pursuing me? Not if they believe it too costly, Wyatt offered his arm. I'll escort you back. As they walked, Meredith glanced sideways at him. I thought you'd be gone by now. We leave tomorrow morning, he hesitated. I wanted to ensure you were settled properly. How considerate, a note in her voice suggested she didn't believe this explanation. At the hotel entrance, she paused. Would you like to come in? Mrs. Porter would probably offer dinner for my rescuer. The invitation tempted him, but Wyatt shook his head. Best I return to the stockyards. Early departure. Disappointment shadowed her features, of course. Safe travels, Wyatt. He tipped his hat, watching as she disappeared inside. The encounter with Holcomb's men left him troubled. Despite his confident words, Wyatt knew such men rarely abandoned pursuit when pride and money were involved. Meredith might never be truly safe while Holcomb believed he had claim to her. Sleep eluded him that night, his thoughts circling between concern for Meredith's safety and the hollow prospect of returning to his former existence. By dawn, as drovers prepared to depart, Wyatt had reached no resolution. Jensen found him saddling his horse. Made your decision. Heading back, Wyatt confirmed, though the words felt wrong in his mouth. The trail boss nodded slowly. Sometimes the brave choice isn't riding into gunfire. Sometimes it's allowing yourself to care. Wyatt tightened a cinch with unnecessary force. Philosophy before breakfast, Jensen. Just observation, Jensen mounted up. We'll wait 20 minutes. After that, catch up if you can. As the drovers organized the remuda for return journey, Wyatt found himself staring toward town. His father's dying words had shaped him for years, never love something you can't stand to lose. But what if the real risk wasn't loving but refusing to love? What if safety wasn't found in isolation but in connection? Meredith's words echoed, living without connection isn't living at all, it's just surviving. With sudden clarity, Wyatt knew he couldn't leave, not without telling her what she'd awakened in him. Even if nothing came of it, even if she rejected him, he needed her to know that she had mattered, that she had changed him. He mounted quickly, turning toward town instead of the trail. Jensen's knowing nod followed him as he rode toward the Porter house at a gallop. Mrs. Porter answered his urgent knock, surprise evident at his disheveled appearance. Miss Davis, he managed, suddenly uncertain. I need to speak with her. Understanding dawned in the older woman's eyes. She's in the kitchen, follow me. Meredith looked up from kneading dough, flour dusting her cheeks and hair tied back with a blue ribbon. At sight of him, she froze, hope and caution warring in her expression. Wyatt. Is something wrong? Yes, he removed his hat, aware of Mrs. Porter discreetly withdrawing. Everything's wrong. I'm leaving with the drive this morning. Confusion replaced hope. I thought that was the plan. It was. It is, he struggled to articulate feelings long suppressed. But I can't stop thinking that Holcomb's men might return, that you wouldn't be safe. Mrs. Porter has hired additional security, she said carefully. I'll be protected. Good, that's good, Wyatt twisted his hat brim, but it's not just that. Meredith wiped her hands on her apron, waiting. 3 weeks ago, I believed the safest way to live was alone. No attachments, no vulnerabilities. He met her eyes. Then I met a woman who showed more courage facing life than I had hiding from it. Her lips parted in surprise. I don't know how to do this, he continued. I've spent years avoiding connection, but the thought of riding away without telling you, he took a deep breath. I care for you, Meredith Davis, more than I believed possible, and it terrifies me. Silence stretched between them. Then Meredith stepped forward, flour-dusted hands reaching for his. It terrifies me too, she admitted softly. Caring for someone means risking loss, after my parents the orphanage. I understand the temptation to close your heart. But you never did. I tried, her smile was gentle. But then a stubborn cowboy kept saving me, kept showing kindness while pretending indifference. How could I not care for him? Hope expanded in Wyatt's chest. I have nothing to offer, no land, little savings. I don't need offerings, just honesty, her fingers tightened on his. Are you truly leaving today? The question demanded truth. I don't want to, he admitted. But I have obligations to the Triple R. Then fulfill them, determination strengthened her voice. Return to Mr. Ryder, complete your contract honorably, and when you're free, she hesitated. If you still feel this way. I will, certainty filled him. This isn't passing fancy, Meredith, it's. I know, her eyes held the same recognition. I'll be here. Mrs. Porter has offered permanent position as assistant manager. By winter, I'll have saved enough to perhaps open a small bakery. The future she described tugged at something in Wyatt, not just the woman herself, but the possibility of roots, of belonging somewhere, of building rather than merely surviving. My contract ends in September, he said, 3 months. Not so long after everything else. Mrs. Porter's discreet cough from the doorway reminded them of time's passage. The drive will be leaving, Mr. Xanders. Wyatt nodded, reluctantly releasing Meredith's hands. I'll write and I'll return. I'll hold you to that promise. Meredith reached up, brushing flour from her fingers to his cheek in gentle caress. Be safe. The kiss surprised them both, brief and sweet, a promise more binding than words. Then Wyatt was striding toward the door, heart lighter than it had been in years despite the separation ahead. Jensen raised an eyebrow when Wyatt rejoined the drovers just before departure, decided to come after all. Until September, Wyatt replied, then I've got business back in Helena. The trail boss grinned. About time you figured that out. The return journey passed in blur of cattle, dust, and anticipation. At night, Wyatt wrote letters by firelight, awkward at first, then flowing more naturally as he shared thoughts long kept silent. He posted them at settlements they passed, receiving Meredith's replies whenever they encountered eastbound travelers. Her letters revealed the woman he'd glimpsed during their journey, intelligent, determined, occasionally stubborn. She wrote of Helena's growth, her work at the hotel, her dreams of a small bakery where travelers and townsfolk could find fresh bread and perhaps a moment's respite. In August, Thomas Ryder called Wyatt into his office. Jensen tells me you're not renewing your contract. No, sir, I appreciate the opportunity, but... You're heading to Helena, Ryder nodded. Good decision, town's growing fast. Opportunities for a man willing to work. Wyatt blinked, surprised at the support. Yes, sir. Got property there myself, Ryder shuffled papers on his desk. Small parcel near the south edge. Was holding it for expansion, but might consider selling to the right buyer. Understanding dawned slowly, sir. Man should have land under his feet if he's planning to court a woman proper, Ryder's eyes twinkled. My sister writes Miss Davis has transformed that old hotel, says she's got a head for business that shouldn't go to waste baking bread. Heat crept up Wyatt's neck. Your sister seems well informed. Porters and Ryders always know what's worth investing in. He pushed a folded document across the desk. Land deed, price is fair, terms generous for a man with good references. Wyatt stared at the paper, possibility unfolding before him. I don't know what to say. Say you'll treat her right, build something worthwhile, Ryder's voice softened. Life's too short and the frontier too hard to waste time on fear, son. September arrived with autumn's first chill. Wyatt rode into Helena with saddlebags containing his worldly possessions, a land deed, and nervous anticipation that made him feel half his age. The Porter house looked different, fresh paint, new sign, flower boxes beneath windows. Mrs. Porter greeted him warmly. She's expecting you, been watching the road for days. Before he could respond, movement on the staircase caught his attention. Meredith descended, golden hair arranged in a neat chignon, wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes. 3 months had added gentle curves to her formerly trail-thin frame and confidence to her bearing. For a moment they simply looked at each other, measuring changes and finding core truths unchanged. "You came back," she said finally. "I promised." She crossed the lobby, stopping just before him. "Your letters, I read them so many times the paper is wearing thin." "I meant every word." Wyatt removed his hat, suddenly aware of dust from the trail. "I should have cleaned up before." Meredith silenced him by taking his hand. "I don't care about dust, I care that you're here." Mrs. Porter cleared her throat. "Perhaps you two would like to speak privately. The garden is pleasant this time of day." The hotel's small garden offered relative privacy beneath a trellis heavy with late roses. Sitting beside Meredith on a wrought iron bench, Wyatt found himself suddenly unsure how to begin. "Helena's grown," he observed awkwardly. "Yes," her smile suggested she found his nervousness endearing. "The hotel is doing well. Mrs. Porter has discussed partnership eventually." "That's wonderful, you deserve success." "And you? What brings you back besides correspondence?" A hint of uncertainty colored her question. Wyatt reached into his coat, producing the land deed. "Mr. Ryder sold me property, south edge of town. Good location for building." Hope brightened her expression. "You're staying in Helena." "If I have reason to," he took her hand. "Meredith, these past months made me realize something. My father was wrong. The greatest risk isn't loving someone you might lose, it's never loving at all." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Wyatt, let me finish before courage fails me." He took a deep breath. "I came back to ask if you'd consider a future together." "Not immediately, I need to build something worthy first, but eventually." "Yes," she interrupted, squeezing his hand. "Yes to eventually, yes to a future, yes to everything." "You haven't heard my plans yet," he protested, though joy surged through him. "I don't need to, whatever they are, we'll face them together." Her free hand touched his cheek. "That's what I learned watching you all those weeks on trail. Life doesn't need to be faced alone." "No," he agreed, drawing her closer, "it doesn't." Their kiss held promise of everything to come, partnership, understanding, and love strong enough to weather frontier hardships. When they finally parted, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "I was thinking," he said softly, "that property might suit a bakery as well as a home, if the lady baker didn't mind a former cowboy underfoot." Meredith laughed, the sound bright with happiness. "I think that could be arranged." By the following spring, a new building stood on Helena's south edge, a bakery with living quarters above and a small stable beside it. Citizens quickly discovered that Davis Bakery offered the finest bread in the territory, while the proprietor's husband provided excellent horsemanship lessons and occasional security for freight wagons. Wyatt and Meredith Xanders became fixtures in the growing city, their partnership a testament to frontier resilience and the courage to love despite life's uncertainties. Their home welcomed travelers, neighbors, and eventually their own children, a family built on foundations stronger than fear. On summer evenings, they often sat on their porch watching sunset paint Montana skies with gold. Sometimes Wyatt would take Meredith's hand, remembering rain-soaked roads and stampeding cattle, orphanage shadows and lonely trails, all the paths that had somehow led them to each other. "Regrets?" she would ask occasionally, knowing the answer but treasuring it nonetheless. And he would smile, the expression no longer rare on features once guarded by solitude. "Only that I almost rode away." For a man who once believed safety lay in isolation, Wyatt had discovered the frontier's greatest truth, that true courage wasn't found in facing danger alone, but in opening one's heart to love despite all risks. And in Meredith's eyes, he found not just the reflection of his better self, but home.